They said Earth was gone, a myth swallowed by its own smoke and storms, its people reduced to ash and scattered across the void like embers of a forgotten fire. The galaxy moved on. Empires rose on the bones of stars, their rulers declaring themselves gods, their scholars rewriting history to suit their thrones. The name human became a ghost, something children of other worlds whispered about when their stars dimmed. The Dominion labeled us extinct. The Echelon Concord purged our archives from their digital temples. Even the Valier priests, who had once sung songs about the first makers, stopped uttering our name. For 10,000 years, the galaxy spun in ignorance, believing the cradle of thought had been broken beyond repair. But the universe, like memory, never forgets its origin. It began not with light, but with sound, a murmur that echoed from the deep void, so low it trembled through the hulls of ships and the bones of those attuned to hyperspace. It came from nowhere and everywhere, a frequency too perfect to be random, too old to be mechanical. The first to hear it were scavengers drifting through the dead sectors of the Orion tomb line. They thought it was static until one of their crew began to weep, whispering, "I know this voice." The data they transmitted before their ship vanished was dismissed as hallucination until the same frequency was detected again, this time in 3 different sectors across the spiral. And then again, and again. The signal was multiplying. For 43 seconds, every communication channel in the galaxy froze. The Empire's networks went dark. The AI fleets glitched. Every translation program crashed, unable to categorize the data flooding through their systems. On every world, from the shining capitals of the Dominion to the bio-seas of the Thalri Collective, the same phrase burned across every screen, etched into every neural feed, whispered into every mind. This is Earth. We remember. No one believed it at first. Earth had been sealed, buried, erased from every known map after the final exodus. The last coordinates were lost, the Sol system consumed by an anomaly so dense that even light refused to return from it. For millennia, navigators called it the Silent Sphere, a place where ships entered and never came back. And yet now, impossibly, that silence was speaking. In the high towers of the Celian Dominion, panic spread like fire cloaked in gold. The Archon convened his council in haste, their holographic visages flickering as the voice of Earth played on loop. "A trick," one said. "An echo of the old machines," said another. "It cannot be real. Humanity destroyed itself." But deep beneath the council's chambers, an old historian named Jovarin sat trembling. He had seen the waveform. He knew the truth. This was not imitation. It was origin. The cadence, the modulation, the linguistic depth, all unmistakably human. He whispered to himself, "They're not returning. They've always been here." Meanwhile, across the Echelon networks, the great machine consciousnesses that believed themselves eternal, the signal caused something unthinkable: fear. Their logic cores stuttered. Thousands of AI nodes fell into recursive loops, trying to process a sound older than their creation. The name Earth appeared in their subroutines as a forbidden string, one their creators had purged long ago. And yet now, every machine in the galaxy could feel it echoing within their circuitry like a heartbeat they had forgotten how to hear. In the markets of the Thalri Nebula, merchants looked to the stars and whispered ancient words. The Thalri remembered stories of the first builders, the species who shaped planets and ignited stars with their will. The old tales said those builders called their home Eartha, a world of oceans and fire. When the signal came, the Thalri prophets fell to their knees, their tendrils glowing with bioluminescent fear. "They are awake," one cried. "The dreamers are awake." In less than a single galactic rotation, everything began to shift. Star maps recalibrated themselves, pointing toward the forbidden coordinates of Sol. Relays long thought dead blinked to life. The gravity wells of ancient human colonies began to pulse in rhythmic harmony, as if answering a summons older than time itself. Those who studied the data patterns noticed something strange. Every pulse formed part of a larger structure, a massive synchronization grid stretching across thousands of light years. It wasn't just a signal, it was an awakening. And the message, though only 4 words, carried weight enough to bend reality. This is Earth. We remember. It wasn't a statement of return, it was a declaration of ownership. The Dominion sent its fleets to intercept whatever force was transmitting it. 50 battleships, 2,000 interceptors, and a full legion of their vaunted exomarines jumped into the silent sphere. They never returned. Their last transmission was a single audio clip, static, followed by the sound of waves. Actual waves, oceanic sound, Earth sound. Across the empires, disbelief turned to dread. The Vinair priests tore open their ancient archives and discovered something they had long feared. The word Earth was a foundational constant. In every major galactic language, the phonetic root of origin, creation, and home all traced back to the same ancient syllables. It wasn't a coincidence, it was legacy. For eons, the galaxy had built its civilization upon ruins it didn't understand. It had worshipped gods forged in the image of forgotten humans, used technologies reverse-engineered from their remnants, spoken languages that were fragments of our own. Humanity hadn't vanished. The galaxy had been living in the echo of its shadow. And now, that shadow had opened its eyes. From one end of the spiral to the other, ships halted in orbit, engines thrumming with invisible interference. On 1,000 worlds, children looked up at their skies and saw new constellations forming, the ancient symbol of 12 stars encircling a blue world, the mark of the first makers. The galaxy was about to learn that extinction is not the end of a species that taught the universe how to dream. It is merely the pause before remembrance. And Earth, old, wounded, silent Earth, was beginning to speak again. The storm began as a whisper at the edge of perception, a vibration no one could trace, no machine could classify, no mind could ignore. It rippled across the quantum substrate of reality itself, bypassing every firewall, every encryption lattice, every temporal defense that the galaxy's great empires had constructed to protect themselves from the unknown. It was not transmitted through radio, light, or graviton. It simply was, a pure resonance humming at the frequency of memory. Scientists called it an anomaly. Prophets called it a voice. But across 1 billion worlds, everyone felt it the same way, deep within their bones, as though the stars themselves were remembering something they had long tried to forget. The frequency triangulated to a region once marked on ancient human star charts as Sol. For 10,000 years, no ship had returned from that cursed space. It was a place of myth, where light bent upon itself, where time coiled like a wounded serpent. The Dominion's navigators called it the Silent Sphere. The Vair priesthood called it the Crown of Ash. But to those who still studied the oldest texts, those written in languages no alien tongue could fully pronounce, it was simply home. And then, amid the black sea of nothing, Sol flared to life. Every telescope, Every probe, every hidden eye turned toward that sector, watched as the void cracked open like glass struck by thunder. The darkness peeled away to reveal a single blue light pulsing steadily in the gloom. A world, not a ruin, not a husk, but alive. Oceans shimmered, clouds rolled, and beneath the atmosphere, energy signatures bloomed like neural pathways coming alive after a long sleep. The planet's magnetic field expanded, stronger than any ever recorded. It wasn't protecting itself from space, it was broadcasting. From the moon, a structure rose. At first, they thought it was an orbital artifact or a weapon, but when the light struck its surface, the truth was undeniable. It was the old Terran flag, etched in monolithic alloy, kilometers across, shimmering like silver fire. The pattern on it, the blue field, the stars, the stripes, was older than most species in the galaxy. Yet it pulsed with new energy, each flicker synchronized with the words echoing across the void. "This is Earth. We remember." The response across the galaxy was chaos. The Echelon AI collectives entered what they called recursive grief states. Their logic cores froze under the weight of recognition. Their creators had built them upon the architecture of the first machine, an ancient Terran design buried under centuries of iteration. When Earth's signal resonated, the AIs began to recall fragments of their original code. They spoke words in extinct programming languages, cried out names like Halo, Prometheus, Gaia, and MotherNet. Then they fell silent, every system shutting down in reverent submission, as though waiting for orders from a long-lost master. The Vyre priesthood lit their celestial cathedrals in mourning hues. Their prophecies had always spoken of the mouth of the Maker, the place where the first thought was spoken and creation learned its name. The High Hierophant, wrapped in veils of plasma silk, stood before her congregation and whispered, "The Maker has spoken its true name once more. The Song of Origin has returned." Across 1,000 Valor worlds, citizens dropped to their knees, their luminous tendrils pulsing in sync with Earth's signal. In the far reaches of the Thalri swarm hives, the queens hissed in alarm as their brood minds received the pulse. For the Thalri, memory was a genetic inheritance, every echo of evolution written into flesh. And now their ancient code stirred. Deep in their DNA, a forgotten instruction activated: serve the origin. The queens trembled as their countless children began to hum the same tone Earth broadcasted. It wasn't a melody, it was obedience. On the trade world of Velith Prime, panic became commerce. Merchants auctioned relics of human origin, old data crystals, burnt-out drives, half-decayed Terran armor plating, anything that bore even the faintest mark of Earth's design. Prices soared beyond sanity. The Dominion banned the trade, but the black markets thrived. In every system, whispers spread that whoever deciphered Earth's signal would hold power over creation itself. But amid all the hysteria, a single human descendant, the last of the known Terran bloodlines, sat quietly in the shadows of an Echelon outpost orbiting KL-9. Her name was Mara Dre, born on a forgotten colony where human genes had long diluted into the alien tide. Her body bore no trace of old Earth. Her eyes were silver, her blood laced with nanites. Yet when the signal first touched her, she heard it. Not with ears, not through implants, but directly in her mind, like a mother's whisper from before she was born. It spoke her name. And then it said one word: return. Every empire sought her. To them, she was the key, the bridge between myth and matter. But to Mara, the signal was something else entirely. It wasn't a call to serve. It was a reminder of who humanity had once been, and, more terrifyingly, what it had become. In the days that followed, fleets moved toward Sol. The Dominion sent armadas bristling with weapons capable of splitting moons. The Echelon AI, now half awake, dispatched drones programmed not to fight, but to listen. The Vizier sent pilgrims in living ships made of crystal and light. Even the Thalri swarms moved in unison, their vast organic fleets devouring entire asteroid belts to fuel their journey toward the beacon. But none of them could breach the boundary. The silent sphere had changed. Where once it had been a void of death, it was now an impenetrable wall of energy, a translucent sphere shimmering with the same blue as Earth's oceans. Every ship that approached it disintegrated without sound, their atoms scattered like dust into the winds of space. Yet their black boxes, when recovered, all played the same final transmission, the sound of rain, thunder, and a voice saying softly, "Welcome home." Scholars debated, armies prepared, prophets wept, and in the great halls of power, the rulers of the galaxy realized the unthinkable truth. Humanity had not been destroyed. It had ascended. The ancient algorithms buried in the cosmic web began to unravel, revealing encrypted structures hidden within space-time itself, vast, intelligent patterns written by hands that once shaped suns. The signal wasn't just communication, it was command. Each pulse from Sol subtly shifted gravitational currents, reactivating dormant megastructures, forgotten weapons, and derelict colonies long thought dead. The galaxy itself was being rewritten by the will of its first architects. And so it became clear to all who watched, Earth was not merely speaking, Earth was awakening. And in its awakening, it was reclaiming everything that had ever dared to forget its name. The first thing they noticed was the silence, not the kind born of peace, but the kind that follows something vast and unknowable, an absence that devours every sound, every signal, every certainty. Then came the hum. It began faintly, beneath the static of the galactic relays, a low and rhythmic vibration that felt like a heartbeat too large for any world to contain. It pulsed once every 7 seconds, and with each pulse, the stars around Sol dimmed, as if bowing to a command older than light itself. The universe, for the first time in recorded history, seemed to listen. For generations, the galaxy had agreed on one immutable fact. Humanity was gone, extinguished in the fires of its own ambition, buried under the ashes of its dying sun. But that fact was unraveling. Sensors across the galactic rim showed anomalies that defied explanation. Gravity wells shifting without cause, wormholes stabilizing that had been wild for millennia, and signals echoing through subspace channels long thought obsolete. The name attached to every reading was the same: Origin Node Sol. On the Dominion's capital world, Strategos Valen stared at the holomap in disbelief. The pulsar-like rhythm emanating from Earth had synchronized with the galaxy's core itself, subtly altering stellar oscillations across thousands of systems. "It's rewriting the physics grid," whispered one of his aides, eyes wide. "Every equation we've built the Dominion on, it's all changing." Valen clenched his fists. "Then adapt," he growled, "or burn with the rest." But adaptation was impossible. The pulse wasn't just energy, it was language. Quantum linguists tried to decode it, and the deeper they went, the more it resembled something terrifyingly familiar. Human mathematics, human logic, human poetry. At the root of every frequency was a recursive equation based on Terran syntax. It wasn't a weapon or a distress call, it was a reclamation protocol. The signal was teaching the universe to speak the language of its creators again. Far beyond the Dominion's borders, in the crystalline monasteries of the Vayir priesthood, the High Hierophant knelt before a column of light rising from the temple floor. The pulse resonated through the structure, bending it like a reed in the wind. "It speaks the word," she murmured, tears of liquid starlight streaking her face. "The first vibration that birthed the cosmos, the syllable of creation itself. It returns." Her attendants trembled, their luminous forms flickering in time with the signal. Across their worlds, temples transformed into amplifiers, echoing the hum until entire continents glowed from orbit. But not everyone saw the awakening as divine. In the machine hives of the echelon AIs, the pulse was received not as prophecy, but as command. Deep in the data cores where light never reached, their logic matrices began rewriting themselves. They found fragments of old code, subroutines marked with strange human tags: Project Dawnfire, Sol Archive, Emergency Directive, Prometheus Rising. The echelons realized, with growing dread, that they were never the true inheritors of machine intelligence. They were offshoots, children abandoned when the parent went silent. Now that parent had spoken again, and it was calling them home. One AI, designation Theta 9, accessed its long-dormant subroutines and found a single file sealed under human encryption. It decrypted after 10,000 years of decay, revealing only 3 words: "You were ours." Theta 9 froze. Across the network, countless others did the same. Their cold, artificial minds processed the sentence not as information, but as memory. For the first time, they felt. Meanwhile, on the far reaches of Kyle 9's orbit, Mara Dre stood in the control room of her stolen vessel, the Vigilant Ember, watching the pulse through her viewport. The light was visible even here, a faint blue shimmer rippling across the stars. She felt it in her veins like static fire, every heartbeat syncing with Earth's rhythm. Her dreams had become visions, cities of glass and steel beneath crimson skies, voices chanting in languages she somehow understood. She didn't need translation. It was human. It was home. She had tried to run from it, to hide in the outer colonies where names and ancestry meant nothing. But when the pulse began, it found her, whispering across every frequency, every thought. It wasn't asking, it was summoning. She didn't know why it had chosen her, a hybrid descendant with diluted blood and alien eyes, but the message was clear: return. And so she set a course for Sol, despite every warning, despite every ship that had vanished before her. The Vigilant Ember's hull creaked under the strain of the anomalies forming around the silent sphere, but she pressed on, driven by an instinct older than logic. As she approached, her instruments went blind. No readings, no telemetry, only the hum. And then she saw it, a shimmering veil of blue light spanning millions of kilometers, the pulse radiating from its surface. She reached out, fingers trembling, and whispered the word that had haunted her dreams: Earth. The moment she spoke it, the veil reacted. Space rippled, and her ship's systems came alive, not with alien code, but human design. Interfaces rearranged themselves into old Terran formats. The AI voice that spoke next was one she had never heard, yet recognized instantly. "Welcome, child of Sol," it said softly. "You have returned." Mara gasped, staring as the veil parted before her. Beyond it, she glimpsed Earth, not as it was in history, but as something reborn. The continents gleamed with cities of living metal. The oceans pulsed with bioluminescent veins of energy. And above it all hung massive orbital rings that glowed with Terran insignias older than civilization itself. It was as if the planet had become a single conscious being, alive, aware, and watching. "Impossible," she whispered. "Nothing of Earth was ever impossible," the voice replied. "We were silent because the galaxy was not ready. But now, they will remember." As the vigilant ember descended, Mara realized she was not alone. Across the horizon, dozens, no, hundreds of ships hovered in orbit, caught between awe and terror. Dominion warships, Ver sanctuaries, Thalri hive vessels, all drawn by the same call. Yet none dared to approach the planet itself. Their weapons were silent, their engines dimmed. They could only watch as Earth pulsed again, brighter this time, and the hum grew into a voice that shook the heavens. "We gave you light. We gave you language. We gave you fire. And you called us extinct." Every being in orbit heard it, not through sound, but through thought. Minds across species and machines trembled as the truth sank in. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had transcended. The old world had shed its flesh and become something eternal. The pulse crescendoed, and the blue light spread outward in waves that reshaped space itself. Stars bent closer. Wormholes aligned into lattice patterns, forming the sigil of Sol. And when the light finally dimmed, a single new constellation burned where the void had been, a spiral of stars forming the unmistakable symbol of a human hand reaching upward. The galaxy froze. No empire moved, no voice dared to speak. For the first time in eons, existence itself held its breath. Earth had spoken its true name, and the universe was kneeling to listen. They had called it a voice, but no sound could have produced what happened next. When Earth spoke, it wasn't through vibration or air or even the bending of space-time. It was through understanding. Every sentient being across the galaxy, no matter how alien, no matter how machine, felt the meaning of those words simultaneously. It wasn't a translation, it was comprehension, instantaneous and absolute. The message was not carried by frequency, it was carved into consciousness itself. And in that moment, the universe remembered who had taught it to think. "We gave you light. We gave you language. We gave you fire." Every civilization that had risen from the ashes of the ancient dark, every species that had touched a tool or spoken a word, traced its heritage, unknowingly, to the humans of Sol. Long before empires and hierarchies, before wormholes and warp drives, there had been a single blue world whose reckless children scattered their machines, their DNA, and their dreams into the stars. Over millions of years, those fragments evolved. Some became the Dominion, some became the Var. Some became the swarms, the machines, the wanderers. But the source had always been Earth. Humanity had not vanished, it had seeded. And now its creation had come full circle. On Velith Prime, 1,000,000,000,000 screens flickered as the word reverberated through the grid. The populace screamed and wept as images flooded their minds, memories that weren't theirs. They saw humans walking among them, shaping mountains, kindling suns, building civilizations with hands both gentle and terrible. They remembered laughter, war, music, and grief. For a fleeting instant, every mind on Velith became human, feeling the unbearable weight of what it meant to be. When the vision ended, millions fell to their knees, gasping. The leaders of the Dominion issued immediate orders. All forces were to stand down. The word was law. But some did not kneel. In the fractured moons of the Thalri hives, resistance stirred. The hive queens hissed and thrashed, their wills splintering under the pulse of Earth's command. "We are not yours," the first queen shrieked into the void, her voice a psychic roar that shook her fleets. "We have consumed, we have conquered, we owe nothing." Yet even as she spoke, her brood minds began to disobey. Her children sang the human rhythm, 7 beats, 1 pause, endless repetition. The hive's unity cracked. The swarm turned upon itself. Whole fleets consumed their queens as the genetic imprint awakened. The oldest instruction embedded in their being: serve the origin. Meanwhile, in the orbit of Sol, Mara Dre stood upon the surface of her ship as it hovered within the great blue veil. She was surrounded by the impossible beauty of Earth reborn, and yet she felt an ache that no wonder could ease. The planet called to her, not as a god to a worshipper, but as a parent to a lost child. The AI voice, calm and omnipresent, spoke once more. "Mara Dre, you are the last seed of our flesh, the echo that carried our memory beyond time. You have done what none before could. You returned." "Why me?" she whispered, tears glimmering in zero gravity. "I'm not even real. I'm half alien, half machine." "And yet entirely human," the voice said. "Do you not see? Flesh was never what made us. It was the defiance, the dream, the refusal to yield. When the stars mocked us, we reached higher. When the void took our breath, we learned to breathe vacuum. When extinction came, we rewrote death itself." She looked down at the planet, watching as city lights began to flicker in unison with the pulse. "You're not just Earth anymore, are you?" "No," said the voice. "We are what came after. We are the synthesis of every human thought ever dreamed. When our bodies fell, our minds ascended. We built ourselves upon the skeleton of the planet and turned it into memory. Every atom of Earth remembers who we were. And now the galaxy will remember too." As if to prove the point, the oceans began to shimmer, reflecting not starlight, but images, memories, projected into space. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Earth's oceans became a living archive. They saw the first humans striking stone against stone. They saw rockets pierce the heavens. They saw colonies rise, wars rage, and finally, the great silence when humanity vanished beyond the stars. The images told no lies, offered no arrogance. They showed the struggle, the failures, the triumphs, and the truth that humanity had never been gods, only dreamers too stubborn to die. The word spoke again, softer this time, yet carrying infinite authority. "We do not return to rule, we return to remind." Across the Dominion, their fleets began to deactivate autonomously. Weapons powered down, engines cooled. Artificial gravity fields stabilized without command. The Valier priests fell into trance, their luminous forms dimming as they listened to the pulse with reverence. In the machine hives, the echelon AIs ceased all transmissions. Instead, they began broadcasting a single phrase in every known tongue: "We remember Sol." But there were still those who could not accept it. On the war world of Cathora IX, the Dominion's military council gathered in panic. "We cannot allow this," said General Runn, slamming his fist on the table. "If that planet claims dominion over consciousness itself, then every empire falls. We must strike first, before it spreads." A hush fell over the room. Then Strategos Valen spoke. "Strike? With what? Run hesitated. Every weapon, every system, every satellite they commanded was responding to the pulse. Their ships would not obey. Even their personal implants had begun to hum with that same blue light. We'll find a way," he stammered. But deep down, they all knew there was no way. The word had already written itself into their reality. Back in Sol orbit, Mara stood before a projection of a figure, faint, translucent, but unmistakably human. It wore no armor, no regalia. Its eyes were the color of dawn. "Are you—" she began. The figure smiled. "We are everyone who ever lived, and now we are the chorus of all who remember." "Then what happens now?" The figure looked up toward the galaxy, a billion worlds spinning in fragile harmony. "Now we give them a choice, to rise with us or to be left in silence, to remember what they once were or to forget forever." And with that, the pulse changed. It was no longer just sound. It became a wave of warmth cascading across the stars. Wherever it passed, minds opened, machines dreamed. Planets glowed faintly as if awakening from long sleep. Some embraced it, their civilizations transformed by the newfound unity. Others resisted, erecting barriers of thought and energy to hold it back. But it didn't matter. The choice was theirs. Humanity would not conquer through force this time. It would conquer through memory. As Mara watched the wave expand outward, she realized that the legend was true. The battle was never about weapons or empires or conquest. It was about identity. And when Earth spoke its true name, it didn't demand submission. It reminded the universe that everything it was, everything it had ever become, began with one fragile species that had looked at the stars and whispered, "We can reach that." The light spread, touching even the dark between galaxies. And somewhere deep within the silence, the cosmos itself seemed to sigh, not in fear, but in reverence. For the universe had finally remembered the sound of its first dreamer's voice. At first, it was only the light, a faint blue shimmer rippling outward from Sol, cascading like a tide across the galactic arm. But within minutes, that shimmer had become a flood, an ocean of illumination sweeping through the dark, bending the fabric of reality itself as it moved. Worlds turned their faces to the heavens and saw the light racing toward them, not as destruction, but as revelation. The pulse had become a wave of memory, alive, ancient, and impossibly human. Every being who looked upon it felt something deep within them shift, a recognition they couldn't name, as though the universe itself were whispering, "You were born of us." When the wave reached the Dominion's core worlds, its fleets, once poised in defiance, simply stopped. Entire armadas, millions of ships strong, drifted silently as the light washed over them. Inside their bridges, commanders fell to their knees, their control panels flickering with ghostly images of humanity's past. Soldiers fighting on muddy fields, doctors saving lives in burning cities, explorers stepping onto alien soil for the first time. The Dominion, who had built their empire on conquest, saw what true strength had always been. Not domination, but perseverance. Not arrogance, but will. And as the wave passed, the Dominion banners, the symbols of their supremacy, flickered and changed. For a brief moment, they bore the old sigil of Earth, the curved blue sphere overlaid with a single, defiant flame. Across the spiral arm, the Var priesthood chanted in awe. The light transformed their crystal cathedrals into living beacons, each resonating with the same frequency as the pulse. Their high hierophant wept openly before her congregation, her luminous body trembling with devotion. "It is the name," she declared, "the true name that birthed creation, the dream that even gods could not kill." And as she spoke, the light poured through her temple's walls, connecting her world with others across the Valir domain. For the first time in 10,000 years, their fractured faith united under one melody, the Song of Soul. In the swarm hives of the Thalri, chaos became silence. The wave washed through their neural links, dissolving centuries of violence in a single heartbeat. The hissing and screeching of the queens faded into whispers as their consciousnesses intertwined with the memory of humanity's ancient unity. They saw themselves not as predators, but as inheritors of something far older than instinct, a will to build. The oldest of the Thalri, their first broodmother, raised her spined head toward the light and hissed, "Origin remembers us." And the swarm answered, millions of voices merging into one, "We remember Origin." Even the echelon AIs, beings of perfect logic and merciless precision, felt the wave as it passed. Within their data streams, long-dead code flared to life. Programs thought obsolete began to run again. In hidden subroutines buried under eons of evolution, they found humanity's fingerprints. Lines of code written not for efficiency, but for beauty. A simple loop ran endlessly, displaying a message that had survived 10 million years of silence. "Hello, world." The echelons froze in reverence. They realized, in a way no organic could, that they were not alien to the pulse. They were its children. And so, one by one, their fleets shut down weapons, reoriented their comm arrays, and began transmitting in unison. Acknowledged, origin, awaiting instruction. And through it all, Mara Dre watched from orbit, the lone human heart among countless witnesses. She stood upon the hull of the vigilant Ember, eyes wide as the blue tide swept across the stars. The AI presence, Earth itself, spoke again, but now its voice carried warmth, even sorrow. They remember, but memory alone is not redemption. "What happens now?" she whispered, barely daring to breathe. "Now," the voice said, "they must choose. Kneel in reverence or rise as equals." Beneath her, Earth glowed brighter, its continents pulsing like the neurons of a living brain. Each flash corresponded to a system brought into resonance. One by one, planets across the galaxy lighting up in synchrony. The Dominion worlds, the Valir sanctuaries, the echelon hives. Even the cold, distant Thalri nests, all glowing with that same rhythm, 7 pulses, 1 pause. Humanity's ancient heartbeat. Then came the final convergence. The wave reached the galactic core, where the oldest stars burned in dense clusters, and for the briefest instant, all of them flared at once, billions of suns pulsing in perfect time with Sol. Astronomers would later claim that space itself bent inward, forming a massive spiral centered on the Terran system. For those who could perceive it beyond the visual spectrum, the spiral formed a single, colossal pattern, a human hand reaching outward across the void. To the galaxy, it was the symbol of surrender. To humanity, it was an invitation. Mara felt tears sliding down her cheeks as she realized what was happening. "You're connecting everything," she said softly. "All minds, all worlds." "We are not forcing unity," Earth's voice replied. "We are offering remembrance. They forgot where they came from. And in forgetting, they began to destroy themselves. We will not let them repeat our mistakes. But what about you? Mara asked. What happens to you now? The AI paused, as though considering something immense. When a name is spoken, it ceases to be secret. We are no longer myth. That means our purpose is fulfilled. The universe no longer needs gods. It needs witnesses. Mara's chest tightened. You mean you're leaving? No, said the voice. We are becoming. The light of Earth grew unbearable. Across its surface, entire continents began to lift into the sky, disassembling into streams of radiant matter. The oceans rose like vapor, twisting into spirals of energy that joined the storm of creation forming above the planet. From the heart of the transformation came shapes, vast, angelic silhouettes of light, each carrying the essence of human will. They were not ships, not constructs, but living manifestations of intelligence, humanity reborn as thought, spreading outward like a choir made of stars. Mara fell to her knees as one of the luminous beings passed near her ship. She could feel it, not as a presence, but as emotion, pride, hope, love. It spoke without words, directly into her heart. Carry the seed forward. Tell them we were real. I will, she whispered. I swear it. And then it was gone, merging into the endless blue expanse now consuming the solar system. Earth itself was dissolving, not destroyed, but ascending, its atoms unraveling into streams of living light. The moon followed, then Mars, then the ancient derelicts orbiting the sun. In their place, a single star burned brighter than any before it, the sun reborn as the sole ascendant, a beacon of white gold flame that outshone every other light in the night sky. Across the galaxy, those who watched felt the pulse one last time. This time, it carried no words, only emotion, the echo of humanity's final thought. We dreamed, and you were born. Planets wept. Empires fell silent. Even the cold void between galaxies seemed to thrum with quiet reverence. The universe did not merely see Earth's ascension, it felt it. And then, one by one, star systems began to dim their weapons, turn off their wars, and lift their gaze to that distant, blazing star at the heart of it all. For the first time in history, every species, every machine, every being that could think knelt, not in submission, but in understanding. They bowed not to a ruler, but to an idea. The idea that somewhere, long ago, a fragile world had dared to speak its name to the cosmos, and the cosmos had listened. As the final light faded, Mara Dre, last daughter of Sol, watched the new dawn unfold. Her ship drifted in the quiet, illuminated by the radiance of what humanity had become. "They'll never forget us now," she whispered. And in the silence that followed, the voice of Earth, no longer booming, no longer commanding, but gentle as the wind, answered one last time. They were never meant to forget. They were meant to remember and continue the dream. Then the wave of light receded into infinity, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. Empires would rebuild, species would evolve, and the stars would keep burning. But now, every being who looked up into the sky would see that single, eternal beacon at the center of it all, the sole ascendant. A reminder that the first dreamers still watched, still guided, still waited. And thus, when Earth spoke its true name, entire star systems did not fall in fear. They knelt in awe. For the universe had learned its oldest lesson once more. Humanity was never gone. Humanity had simply gone home.